the people who follow the rules as lame and kind of annoying and just awful to be around. And those are the dividing lines. Those are the only cultural, because there are no kind of like materialistic dividing lines as much anymore, like real material, like class lines anymore, just the way things are going. And those are the only things that matter more and more in our politics. And people like places like Williamson County in Nashville, Forsyth County in like DeKalb County in Atlanta, like heavily white area, went for Biden massively in a red state like Georgia. It's a very kind of unexpected, like somewhat surprising thing if you go by the old political assumptions of like Georgia's a red state, white people vote overwhelmingly red, and no, because these are people who, again, they've learned the lessons of like what a president, like they more and more have these kind of expectations from someone who's supposed to be kind of a powerful figure, a leader in office. They should behave some sort of certain way. And when they don't, it's much, much more of a concern for them in terms of people like who are from Zapata County, for example, the county in southern Texas that swung like 30 points for Trump. Like it just doesn't matter, and those people look like losers. Those people look like those people who are like whining about like a return for the soul of the nation or whatever, a battle for the soul of the nation. Like that kind of campaign is really, all it's saying is just, can we please follow the rules again? Like that's really all it is. Yeah. So let's take a look at this. So county correlations with swings away from the president from 2016 to 2020, where 1 represents a perfect relationship and 0 represents no relationship. So again, 0.49 correlation of swing away from the president with a higher percent of a college degree. So more educated people, 0.49% swung away. Percent routine jobs, 0.39 swing away. 0.2 higher projected. I mean, this is kind of the fundamental economic status there. Economic outcomes during Trump under pandemic, change in employment. I mean, more people. I don't really get that, but we'll move on here. So, a more educated workforce bodes well for future local economic success, and places with brighter prospects swung towards Joe Biden. Like more educated college places, people who've had the kind of cultural college experience, and people who are around other people who have had the cultural college experience tend to empathize more with the Joe Biden message, which I think makes a lot of sense. Counties where jobs are more routine in the sense of being at greater risk for automation, they voted strongly for Trump in 2016 and even more so in 2020. While counties with fewer such jobs swung towards Biden, similar counties with a mix of occupations that are projected to grow faster voted even more strongly for Biden in 2020 than Hillary Clinton in 2016. So right now what we are seeing is more and more the people who are economically advantaged, the people who are set up to succeed right now are supporting Biden. And I mean, in terms of economic policies, if you look at the Republican Party and Democratic Party, there's no real clear economic policies from either side. Like, they're not central to either campaign. I think in a very big way. It's a cultural dividing line. It's not that Joe Biden is going to bring back jobs and everyone knows that, so all the smart people are voting for him. Like, that is not what it is. I really don't think it's economic at all. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, so in terms of share of routine jobs, so less than 40% of people who have pretty much, you can read routine jobs as people, jobs that might be taken away due to automation. So less than 40 counties with less than 40% of at-risk jobs of automation. Trump law actually, this is less than 40 jobs are not at risk. Trump significantly gained with a 30 point, what was that about? I don't know, maybe, it's no real labeling there, but maybe 4 or 5 point improvement there. And you can see more than 50% of the jobs are not at risk for automation. He's 30 points down, and really, like, more and more, the common trend is where there are more areas where kind of jobs are more risky, Trump, across the board, regardless of race, gained in a big way. So that, like, he is kind of the candidate of the economically insecure, which I think is very, very interesting. And I really want to get other people's opinions on this because it's a very, very interesting topic. But again, we shall see. I definitely think it's a trend to watch, the kind of shifting away of the electorates from the kind of typical lines of, like, well, minorities vote Democrat and white liberals on the coast vote Democrat. Like, that's the coalition. And working class white people. No, it's not that. It is really more than ever a line between education, future economic prospects, and the kind of cultural experiences that come with it in college education. So, all right, guys, we're going to switch away from broader political questions into some Democrat talk. So, Democrats, if you're like me and you're tired of the self-styled progressives telling our most important candidates in swing districts in red states how to run their races, like, that sucks. Like, those people, these self-styled quote-unquote progressives, need to stick it out. The latest member of the squad to do this is upstart Representative Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, the House Majority Whip, who has represented a comfortably D+19 seat based in Charleston, Columbia for nearly 30 years. In the wake of down-ballot Democratic defeats last Tuesday, including in his home state, Clyburn, instead of keeping his disagreements in-house, has been making the rounds in the press to insist that Democrats not mention Medicare for All or defunding the police, saying, quote, "This foolishness about you got to be this progressive or that progressive," he says, that phrase, defund the police, cost Jamie Harrison tremendously. He told Axios, referring to the South Carolina U.S. Senate candidate. Here he is.
I'm curious what you make of the fact of the House seats that you lost and why that happened.
Well, it happened simply because we were not able to discipline ourselves according to voter sentiment. We keep making that mistake, this foolishness about you got to be this progressive or that progressive. That phrase, defund the police, cost Jamie Harrison tremendously. Now, I'm not saying it was the only problem.
You sound kind of mad, Congressman. It sounds like you're blaming the more progressive members of your party for holding folks accountable or to a standard that doesn't work in their district. You blame the progressive members?
No, I don't blame progressive members. I want everybody in my caucus to be as practical as I am. That's the difference here. How are you going to look at me and say I'm not progressive? This foolishness about you more progressive than I am, that's poppycock, and I'm not going to listen to it.
Poppycock. That's a new one. But yeah. Who can possibly look at Jim Clyburn and say he's not progressive? Like, I couldn't dream of it. No way. I mean, does that sound like someone who's interested in winning congressional majorities? Or is it someone imposing yet another purity test to be holier than thou and trying to be the most progressive? I don't know. Instead of getting stuck in this literal liberal echo chamber on Twitter, which again is not real life, folks, let's look at the data. When Harrison entered the race last year, polling at the time found him down by as much as 20 points. But in the summer, when protests against killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and black people killed by police began to hit their peak, Harrison somehow, again, for some weird reason, I actually remember this time as being the time when defund the police was most talked about. Harrison actually began consistently polling, even with Graham, in a deeply conservative state. That doesn't fit my preconceived narrative. Whatever. The polls, as it turns out, were deeply wrong. With nearly all the votes counted, Harrison is down by 10 points to Graham and effectively running even with Joe Biden, the Democratic president-elect, who didn't contest South Carolina whatsoever in the general election. But in the third quarter of the 2020 cycle, spanning July through September, Harrison raised nearly $57 million, breaking all-time record for Senate candidates both in a single quarter and was also on his way to breaking the all-time record for Senate candidates in a single campaign by raising $108 million. Harrison shattered these records, even though though he himself did not support Medicare for All. And neither Harrison nor did any other major Democratic candidates run anywhere in a message of some kind of socialism or defunding the police during the general election. Maybe, just maybe, he has a better idea of how to run a statewide campaign in South Carolina than a litmus test liberal like Jim Clyburn, who has obviously never tried. Graham, though, still attacked him for it, of course, and the incumbent was able to skillfully tie Harrison to some of the more radical fringe elements of his party. Again, people like Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton. So radical, so fringe, right? When you look at the facts rather than the noise on Twitter, Harrison ran the exact campaign Clyburn wanted. The reality is that there are many more Republican voters than Democratic voters in South Carolina. The congressman may want to think about that when he snipes at his fellow Democrats for doing what they need to do in order to win an election. So that's obviously a clearly satirical blog there by Paul Balesta's discourse. But pretty much what he's saying is it's really stupid to look at this because, again, as you can see, he did best when there was the most Democratic excitement because this is, again, a concept that is just clearly anathema to everything that exists in the Democratic Party. It's the concept of talking to your base. Like if you asked any of the Democratic leadership to define a base election, they'd look at you like just blankly, and like their eyes would turn into spirals, and they'd just be like, "What? I don't comprehend base of the party. I don't know." And that's why we see progressive with the wonderful slogan, "Embrace the base, embrace the base, embrace the base." So, yeah, you like to see that, but again, it's just like. Sometimes it actually works to get your people out, and when people are more enthusiastic, like, for example, Black Lives Matter registering like something like 1 million voters, like that is something that should not be ignored, and I think it can't be ignored if you're looking at trying to win in the future, like actually giving people reasons to vote for you and telling them what you would do. For example, in the Georgia Senate race, this idea was thrown out by David Dayen. He was like, hey, how about Senate Democrats come up with a list of things, a stimulus bill, they'll write it out. They say, this is what's going to be in it. And this is what we can do for you if you elect John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. That would win them the seats, I think. If they started that message ASAP and said that, we can pass. We got Joe Biden there now. We can do it. Elect us. We will actively make your lives better. You'll have freedom and groceries, to quote the old New Deal slogan. But anyway, someone who seems to be getting that is Rashida Tlaib. She's not apologizing for wanting to yank money away from bad police departments. She has no second thoughts about her embrace of the Black Lives Matter movement or for wanting to aggressively fight against climate change. House Democrats lost seats instead of expanding their majority, underperforming expectations across the board. And moderates have pounced on liberals like Tlaib, the Michigan congresswoman, accusing them of handing conservatives a set of slogans and policies to scare voters. But Tlaib and other House progressives don't want to hear it. It all amounts to unfair blame casting designed to shame them into staying quiet, they say, right as the Democrats gain control of the White House. We're not going to be successful if we're silencing districts like mine. And that's exactly right, because her district, more than anything, actually represents the base of the Democratic Party, which, again, Democratic leadership doesn't care about. They don't care about the base. They don't care about listening to the base in any way, doing a policy for the base. It's all catered to what they see as like the suburban swing Republicans who, again, they're the college-educated Republicans who are becoming, as we talked about in the last story, lesser and lesser and lesser because they're getting hooked on this kind of decency message, this kind of like cultural, we're going to do the right things and we're going to look like politicians. We're going to look like, government has always looked. And we're gonna do the right things. We're gonna keep our voices down, be sensitive, talk about a lot about social justice and equality, but far, far away from any kind of like real structural reforms. So she says Me not being able to speak on behalf of many of my neighbors right now, many of whom are my black neighbors, means me being silenced. And I can't be silent, saying, quote, "We are not interested in unity that asks people to sacrifice their freedom and their rights any